Gentlemen, this week, the name on the marquee has got to be Jiri Prochazka, who this past weekend at UFC 275 defeated Glover Teixeira by submission via rear naked choke in the 5th round, the official time coming at 4:32 of the 5th round. Oh my God. I bet nobody saw this one coming. In doing so, Jiri became the now undisputed UFC light heavyweight champion. Mark, let me start with you. What did you make of this? I mean, where do you start? I mean, this fight was crazy.
Yeah, you and I both laughed last week pretty much and said that we couldn't imagine it making it to the 4th round, and it made it to 5th and practically to the damn bell. But I would like to clap it up for both of these men.
Yeah.
What they endured in those 25 minutes of that fight, and it was both of them that endured it, was legendary. Was the technique always the best? No. Was the defense lacking a bit at times? Yes. But the heart on display in that fight is the reason why we watch MMA in the first place. It's the reason why we love the sport. And they both had heart in spades in that fight. I mean, what do you even say about it? I don't know where you start trying to analyze it. No position was safe all fight long. Even the most dominant position felt like all it meant was that maybe you had like 10 seconds before you were the one getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't get over the finish. Jiri tapping Glover with a no-hook rear naked choke had to be literally 1,000,000 to 1 odds, especially doing it in the 5th round. Glover's body just had nothing left to give in that moment between how tired he was and how much damage he absorbed. His body just couldn't hold out. And Jiri gets one of the most improbable finishes we've ever seen in a fight. And what makes it even crazier and tougher for Glover is that he was going to win. He was ahead on the judges' hearts. In 30 more seconds, the man was going to retain his championship. And I don't know how I had it. I did rewatch it for the enjoyment of it. I didn't even attempt to score it. Live, I gave up scoring it in about 3 minutes. But that's tough for Glover that he was going to walk away with it. He was so close, and he just couldn't hold out. I mean, if you ever asked him what he get before the fight, any chance you get tapped by a no-hook rear naked choke, he would have laughed for about 10 minutes straight.
Yeah, you're probably
and
right.
That's what ends up happening. But I mean, he took an ungodly beating in there at 42 years old, only to sacrifice the belt anyway. So tough look for him. Granted, Jiri took just as brutal of a beating, or if not more. I mean, maybe I don't know who took it worse, to be honest. But for him to stay in there and find a way to come out on top was incredible. So props to him. And he was so rocked in that 5th round.
Oh my God.
That, I mean, and the decision of Glover to jump guillotine there was
my God, don't even
not
get
the
me
greatest
started.
decision you've ever seen in your life. Sweaty, bloody. You have here, he's stumbling around and you jump guillotine. That was a little bit of a tough one. But he was so rocked there that when he ended up on top, when Glover jumped guillotine and fell, he didn't even move for like 5 seconds. Like he was laying on top of Glover like, fuck, like I got to figure out where I am again. So that man went through it too. I mean, they both did. So I want to make sure to give Jiri the props because he absolutely deserves it. Was it his cleanest or most dominant performance ever? It certainly was not, but he went through hell. He never stopped trying to find a way to win that fight, and he did it. And honestly, the craziest thing of all to me, from what I thought going into that fight to now, was how well he did in the grappling. And even in round 1, like when they were dry, when they were fresh, he got up 2 different times. Like no one does that against Glover. When Jan hit the mat, he was dead in moments. When Anthony Smith hit the mat, who was a good grappler, he couldn't go anywhere. So either Jiri is a good grappler who just never has really gotten the credit for it, never really got to show it, maybe, or Glover was just oddly off. I know he did mention that he had a rough weight cut, but it was definitely weird to see someone escape from Glover that many times. And even in the ways he did it, like in the 4th round, he reverses the arm triangle with like the backflip roll, which like never works. And somehow that works underneath Glover Teixeira. So it was just a lot of like, everything that happened in the fight was wild and didn't really make a lot of sense, but it was amazing, and I loved every second of it. So props to both guys. It was an awesome fight, and Jiri absolutely earned getting to put that belt around his waist.
Omar, let's bring you in here. What were your thoughts? Lead us through your emotional journey watching these nearly 5 rounds.
Yeah, I also stopped counting after 2 minutes, maybe, in that fight. That fight got crazy, and it got crazy real fast, and it didn't stop getting crazy. There were exchanges from beginning to end on both sides. I mean, the reversals that were in that fight, it was round after round of reversals. Jiri on top, Glover rolling him over, Glover getting rolled again by Jiri. That was an insane fight. And when I was texting Mark that night, because I know you had a show that night, but when I was texting Mark that night, I was like, dude, I'm glad I'm not a judge, and I'm glad I didn't need to go to a judge because that fight was just borderline impossible to score, in my opinion. It was very, very difficult. But man, we really got treated that night to a lot of these fights that we're going to talk about coming up, and Glover was a real nice cherry on top. I wish Glover would have won that fight. There was a moment in round 4 where I thought I was going to get that submission pick that we talked about last week. I was like, fuck, make me seem like a big genius. It did not work out, and for me, so that's no good. But it was a fantastic fight. I need a rematch. I need a rematch.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
It's got to happen. That's got to be the fight.
I can't remember a title fight, or really any fight, in which there were so many moments that I thought, oh, this is it. He's going to finish him.
Oh, my God.
For both guys, multiple times.
Yep.
There's been, talk on the internet now about everyone's comparing this fight to the John Jones-Gustafsson fight, and whether this fight is the greatest light heavyweight championship fight of all time.
That's a tough
and
one.
the only reason why I don't think so is because the accolades that John Jones had at the time. Beating John Jones at the time was like conquering Mount Everest, something nobody had ever done. No one can solve the puzzle. And the belts have changed hands so frequently recently that I don't think it holds the same amount of weight as far as what the fight means. The performances themselves, I think, are probably on par with one another. That fight was just as back and forth as the Gustafsson-Bones fight. But I think the weight of the fight doesn't compare.
Sure.
I also think the technique on display was at a higher level in the Bones-Gustafsson fight.
Agree. Totally agree.
It almost felt to me like both guys didn't have their greatest night. But it still turned out to be this incredible back-and-forth contest. But if you ask me, was either guy on his A game in there? I think I would say no.
I don't know if I would completely agree with that. I think they proved to be.
That's definitely a hot take, I'm sure. But
Yeah. I think they definitely showed that they were very tough style matchups for one another. For Jiri, it's like a guy who's a very strong, physically strong grappler, and for Glover, it's a guy who's a much younger, more athletic, more springy striker. And but they both found a ton of success. They just kept alternating every 2.5 minutes of who was coming out on top.
Glover's boxing should not be underestimated either.
Oh,
no.
Glover's got hands, especially for a guy who's that skilled in jiu-jitsu. Glover has got some real power behind those hands and those hooks.
I think it has to be. I'm trying to think who else could possibly be. He has to have the best chin in the history of a 40-year-old person. It doesn't make any sense that a man that old can take the shots that he takes.
Yeah.
I thought he was going down so many times.
Only to reverse and start beating on Jiri, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't even like Glover was not doing anything when he got an advantageous position. He got a moment to breathe. He didn't breathe. He just started raining down punches like if he had been on top the entire time. It was madness. The entire fight was madness.
Every time he was firmly on top, he was landing bomb elbows on Jiri's head.
Dude, he ripped him open. He gave him a whole other eyebrow, a brand new eyebrow on his head.
Yeah, that fight was violence, man. Violence.
Yeah, I had to rewatch that. All right, gents, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what's next for these two guys. Omar already kind of tipped his hand here. If you want to elaborate a little bit more, Omar, that you think the next thing for both these guys is each other again. What do you think?
So I'll take a step back. I'm very emotional after that fight. I wanted Glover to win. The way that fight ended, the fact that the judges' scorecards were going one way, Jiri pulls it off right at the very end. Can't take anything away from Jiri. That fight was back and forth as it was. It could have gone to Jiri on the scorecards, and I probably wouldn't have been mad about it anyway. But just with the way everything went, and to be honest, Jan's last performance, it wasn't bad, but it doesn't really make me want to watch him against Jiri right now. I really want to watch Jiri against Glover again. That fight was just... It just feels like it still needs to be settled. I don't know why, because it was definitely a finish. But they're just... I don't know. Nobody came out of there seeming like they were significantly better than the other. It seemed like two pieces of steel that were rubbing against each other, and one kind of got a crack right at the very end. But I still need more.
Mark, agree, disagree? Any other names that you would throw out?
Yeah, I'll elaborate a little bit, but I'm with it. If it was up to me, I would honestly have these two run it right back. I know Glover never even defended the title. Why would he get an immediate rematch? I get it. But, I said if it was up to me, and that is what I do. That fight was so good. It had so many momentum swings. The guy who was going to win on the cards loses with under 30 seconds left. It just, as much as it was decided, it feels still a little undecided. And maybe most important of all, there is no clear guy who's chomping at the bit for a title. Like, Jan just lost his belt, and his bounce back win was via injury to Rakic.
Yep.
And yes, the winner of Ankalaev and Anthony Smith will be in a great spot. But I wouldn't say either of them has such an overwhelming title claim that you can't deny them. So if it's up to me, I'm having Jan fight the winner of that fight, and I'm running it back. What's more likely in reality is probably that if the Ankalaev Smith winner wins really impressively, that's who will fight Jiri, and they'll probably do Jan and Glover again. If the Ankalaev Smith winner isn't super impressive, then they'll probably have Jan fight Jiri, and that guy will fight Glover. So that's my guess of what actually happens. But
I thought the other way around. Like, if it wasn't impressive, they would give Jan the winner of that fight, and then run back Glover and Jiri.
Oh, I really don't think they're going to run it back. I think it's either going to be Jan fighting Jiri or the winner of that fight fighting Jiri. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Because my last point I was going to make is, what fight creates the most buzz right now? If you said Jiri's going to fight Ankalaev or Smith or Jan or Glover, it's the Glover rematch. So as much as I feel like it doesn't, the contenders are going to bitch about it. Like, Jan will bitch about it. Whoever wins that Ankalaev Smith fight will bitch about it. But for the UFC, I think it probably makes the most financial sense. So,
yeah,
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we do.
I think you're right. Yeah. Well, guys, this is probably a contender for fight of the year for 2022.
I would say so.
And in recent memory, one of the better title fights that I can remember right now.
Especially at light heavyweight. I mean, that's one of the better fights, the better fights, period, that we've seen at light heavyweight in quite some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.